Every classic car has a story the brochure never told you. But the 1961 Chevrolet Impala has 20 of them, and at least one is so strange that lifelong Chevy collectors refuse to believe it the first time they hear it. This is the car people claim started the muscle car war, except the credit usually goes to a different car 3 years later. This is the car that almost never got built the way you know it today. And by the end of this video, you will understand why one rushed for dollar decision made in a boardroom in December of 1960 is still shaping the collector car market right now. Stay with me, because number 1 is the secret automotive historians still argue about, and it will completely change how you look at every muscle car that came after it. Let's start at the beginning. Number 20. The clean, finless body you picture when you think of a 61 Impala almost never existed. Tail fins were sacred in Detroit at the time. Buyers expected them, executives were terrified of losing them, but General Motors had just replaced its design chief, and the new man had a wildly different vision, one that put his own career on the line. He believed America was done with chrome wings pointed at the sky, and he pushed to strip the fins away entirely. Senior executives argued this was suicide. They believed buyers would walk right past a Chevrolet that dared to look this plain. They were wrong in the most spectacular way possible, but for a few tense months inside GM, nobody knew that yet. Number 19. The most beautiful part of this car nearly got killed for being too dangerous to build. The Impala's glass dome roof, the one collectors now call the bubble top, started as a rough sketch that was never supposed to leave the studio. Engineers looked at the impossibly thin pillars and the deeply curved rear glass and said it could not be manufactured reliably. It took one single executive personally overruling the entire engineering team to keep it alive. Without that one intervention, the most photographed Chevrolet roofline of the entire decade simply would not exist. Number 18. There is a version of this car Chevrolet built for exactly 1 year, and then quietly erased forever. In 1961 only, buyers could order a 2-door Impala with a fixed center pillar, something between a budget sedan and the glamorous hardtop. It sold over 150,000 units, then vanished the very next year, never to return under the Impala name again. That single detail alone is why serious collectors hunt for this one specific body style today. Number 17. Chevrolet's own advertising bragged about 24 different ways to describe going fast, and it was not exaggeration. A base 6-cylinder for cautious buyers, small block V8 options for the middle ground, and a massive big block offered in 7 separate states of tune. Add 5 transmission choices and you get customization modern buyers can barely imagine. One single model could be a grocery getter for a conservative family, or a genuine street weapon, off the very same showroom floor. Number 16. This was the final year a legendary station wagon name would ever wear a full-size Chevrolet badge, and almost nobody who bought one realized they were watching an era end. That nameplate had debuted 6 years earlier as one of the most glamorous 2-door wagons America had ever produced. By 1962 it was quietly demoted to a much smaller platform, where it eventually faded away completely. Buyers that year drove home the true closing chapter of that story with absolutely no idea it was ending. Now here is where things turn dark, because everything up to this point was just the setup. What comes next is the part Chevrolet definitely did not put in the brochure. Number 15. The performance package that became one of the most famous badges in American car history was created in a rush panic less than 3 weeks before Christmas. Rivals were making aggressive moves on the street and at the drag strip, and Chevrolet needed an answer fast. So they bundled upgraded brakes, heavier suspension, a dash-mounted gauge and special badging, slapped on a name, and released it for barely $50 extra. Nobody in that boardroom believed they were creating something that would still be selling cars 6 decades later. Number 14. Of nearly 500,000 Impalas built that year, fewer than 500 received this special performance badge. Within that microscopic group, barely over 100 cars got the one engine option that made them legends. That engine wasn't even available when the model year began. It arrived months later with brutal restrictions, no automatic allowed, no air conditioning permitted, and a compression ratio so aggressive it demanded premium fuel and generated dangerous heat. Historians estimate only a small handful of those original cars still exist in documented form anywhere. A genuine survivor is worth a small fortune today. Number 13. Here's the part that sounds like a joke until you check the paperwork. The engine that defined an entire era of American performance was never designed to be a performance engine at all. Its architecture began life as a truck engine, built for hauling freight and enduring abuse, not winning races. When engineers needed something bigger to answer a rival, they simply bored and stretched this humble workhorse until it became something nobody expected, a ferocious street engine wearing the DNA of a delivery truck. Number 12. Chevrolet undersold how powerful this engine actually was, and the drag racing world figured it out almost immediately. The factory rating on paper looked safe, believable. But independent magazine testing kept producing quarter-mile times that numbers simply could not explain. Racers whispered the real output was far higher than the brochure admitted, and within a year Chevrolet quietly bumped the official rating up to a suspiciously perfect number, exactly 1 horsepower per cubic inch, a milestone that felt less like an accident and more like a number they had been sitting on the whole time. Number 11. The song that turned this car into a cultural icon was recorded using an engine that wasn't even the one it was singing about. A young California surf rock group released a track glorifying this exact car, and the rumbling V8 baked into the recording actually came from the songwriter's own car, powered by the older, less famous predecessor engine. The most famous engine sound in rock and roll history was, in reality, the sound of the engine it had just replaced. Yet the lyrics were precise enough that dealerships started getting letters from teenagers requesting that exact factory configuration by name. If you think that's strange, wait until you hear what happened on an actual drag strip months earlier, because this next one is what collectors argue about the most. Number 10. At a major national drag event that year, one car crossed the line wearing a configuration no ordinary customer could buy. A famous professional racer was quietly handed a version of this engine with an intake and carburetor setup that never appeared on any retail car that season. Every unit sold to the public came with a single carburetor. His did not. His win proved to the country that this wasn't just a family car with a big engine bolted in, it was a legitimate weapon, and the publicity echoed through enthusiast magazines for months. Number 9. That signature 3-light taillight design was never just styling, it was a silent ranking system built into the sheet metal. Cheaper models wore 2 lamps per side. Only the top trim got 3 lamps clustered on each side, 6 lights total glowing across the rear. In an era when everyone recognized every Chevrolet trim by sight, seeing those 3 lights in your mirror told you exactly where you stood, and Chevrolet kept that detail for years because it worked that well. Number 8. This car was built and shipped across the planet in a way that sounds more like a modern supply chain than something from 1961. Additional units were produced overseas, often shipped in kit form and assembled locally with a mirrored dashboard for right-hand traffic. In at least one of those markets, this became the first American car ever offered standard with a V8, stunning local buyers used to much smaller imports. This was never a niche product built for one country. It was a global car hiding behind a very American badge. Number 7. That small tachometer mounted right on the steering column wasn't just a cool-looking gauge, it was a calculated safety decision hiding in plain sight. Instead of burying it deep in the dashboard, engineers placed it where a driver pushing the big engine hard could check it with barely a glance down. Paired with special heavy-duty brake linings resistant to fade under repeated hard stops, this package was engineered as a genuine performance tool, not a collection of badges for people who would never use any of it. We are almost at the top of this list now, and the next 3 facts completely rewrite what you think you know about where the muscle car era actually began. Number 6. A rival manufacturer's decision to release a bigger engine that same year is the entire reason this car's most famous engine exists at all. For 2 years, Chevrolet's existing big engine had been perfectly competitive. Then a competitor announced a larger displacement engine as their new performance standard, and Chevrolet realized their current engine was about to look small on paper and in public perception. There was an unspoken rule in Detroit: cubic inches won arguments in the showroom before any car ever reached a drag strip. So Chevrolet responded the only way that mattered, boring and stretching their engine until the size difference alone made the point unmistakable, even though the horsepower number on paper still technically lost. Number 5. That performance badge, born out of pure panic in December, went on to become one of the most valuable two-letter combinations in automotive history, gracing decades of legendary muscle cars and sports cars afterward. Nobody who approved that rush package for $50 extra could have imagined those two letters would still be moving cars off showroom floors more than 60 years later. What started as a defensive scramble became a permanent piece of American car culture, purely because customers responded in a way nobody at the company had planned for. Number 4. The glass roof that made this car so visually stunning nearly broke the supply chain trying to get built. The curvature required for that wraparound rear window was so extreme, and the surface area so large, that existing equipment simply could not reliably produce it without distortion. Chevrolet's glass suppliers had to invent entirely new forming and tempering processes just to manufacture that one piece of glass at the volume demand required. Every buyer who admired that soaring roofline was unknowingly looking at an engineering scramble the marketing department never once mentioned. Number 3. The base price of this car wasn't an afterthought. It was the single decision that quietly made everything else on this list possible. The story people love to tell is about the rare performance versions and the record-breaking engine, and that story is true, but it sits on top of a much less glamorous foundation, an honestly affordable, spacious, attractive family car ordinary working Americans could actually walk into a dealership and buy on a normal monthly payment. That accessible foundation is exactly why Chevrolet sold nearly 500,000 of these in a single year when the country's population was roughly half of what it is today. The wild performance variants captured the headlines, but the humble family sedans quietly paid every bill. Number 2. The underlying platform this car rode on would define an entire generation of American automobiles for almost 2 decades afterward, and this exact year was the first time that platform appeared in its fully modern form. Engineers reworked the structure to support the cleaner new styling, somehow making the car noticeably shorter overall while keeping the same wheelbase, a genuine packaging achievement that freed up proportion without stealing a single inch of interior space. That same architecture underpinned full-size cars from multiple General Motors brands for nearly 20 years straight. Every one of those later cars, evolving generation after generation, is a direct descendant of decisions made in this exact model year. And now, number 1, the dark secret nobody talks about, the one that changes everything you thought you knew about this car's real place in history. The popular story credits a completely different manufacturer, 3 years later, with inventing the muscle car formula: take a big platform, drop in the most powerful engine available, add a serious suspension package, give it a badge that means something, and price it low enough that ordinary Americans can reach it. But that formula was not invented 3 years later. It was already tested, proven, and working perfectly on this exact car 3 years earlier, and almost nobody gives it credit for that. A professional racer proved on a national stage that it could win. A hit song proved that it could sell. And the fact that a small, stubborn group of buyers walked into dealerships and specifically paid extra for a stripped-down, uncomfortable, high-compression, manual transmission-only performance package proved there was a real market for exactly this kind of car: small, passionate, and completely disproportionate in cultural influence compared to its tiny sales numbers. That discovery quietly rewired the entire direction of American car manufacturing, and every muscle car that followed for the next decade owes something to this one overlooked year that history keeps handing to somebody else. So the next time somebody tells you the muscle car era started in 1964, you'll know the real secret: it actually started 3 years earlier, hiding in plain sight, wearing chrome trim and a badge nobody thought would matter.